Hello, this is Faria, and you are watching The Inclusive International. Sudan's conflict has been drawing global headlines since April 15th, 2023, as clashes broke out in Sudan's capital, Khartoum, between the two main factions of the ruling military regime, the Sudanese Armed Forces and a rival paramilitary force, the Rapid Support Forces. According to reports coming from different sources, around 600 people have been killed and about 4,600 injured in violence. United Nations estimates that more than 800,000 civilians may be forced to leave fighting in Sudan to neighboring countries. According to another report by the UN, people are trapped indoors, terrified with fewer supplies of food, medicines, and fuel. Health services are nearly to collapse, and several hospitals are being used by armed groups. There are also reports of electricity and internet cut. Across the country, there have been reports of armed clashes. People have fled their homes to take refuge in neighboring countries. UNFPA says if violence in Sudan does not stop, there is a danger that pregnant women and their unborn children will die. It estimates that there are 219,000 pregnant women in Khartoum, including 24,000 pregnant women expected to give birth in coming weeks. To speak about the power struggle and catastrophic situation in Sudan, we have invited Dr. Alpha Ferbal, who is a Darfuri-born Australian. He has done PhD from Monash University in Australia, specializing in international political economy of resources-based development. Dr. Alpha, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Okay, so Dr. Alpha, you must be having friends and family back home. Tell us what's happening there now. How are people surviving and feeling about their homeland? Are they scared, fearful, or they're ready to face a situation?
All the streets are full of militias, and there is no food, and the hospitals are overcrowded, and they can't go out, and they don't have much to eat, and there's no medication. So the situation is very, 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 very fragile. It's very difficult, and they can only hear the sound of the bombs and the fighting, the gun sounds. This is what is now happening in Khartoum. So no one is actually feeling safe in Khartoum, and that's happening throughout Khartoum, in Oman, Bahri city, and also in different parts of Khartoum, the war is happening.
So tell us about the international help, are civilians and Sudanese government satisfied with the help coming from the international community, especially in terms of food, medicine, and medical health?
Well, as far as I know, there is really no help from international community. Well, like yesterday or before yesterday, there was a Red Cross that was delivering medication to Khartoum. But apart from that, we haven't heard any international support. You know, when you compare that to war in Ukraine, where when the fighting broke out, then you have a lot of countries delivering food, delivering aid and medication.
Oh, really?
And helping. Not in Sudan. I'm just comparing to what happened in Ukraine, for example, between Russia and Ukraine. But in case of Sudan, we haven't seen any active involvement of international community in terms of delivering food or medication to civilians in Sudan. So there is very little that is being done by international community. The civilians are trapped in Khartoum, and everyone is trying to escape. You know, they're just trying to escape the war, and they have no option except some of them are walking. There are some buses that are voluntarily taking people to far away, to outside of Khartoum, because the war is happening in the center of the Khartoum. So the situation is really difficult here.
Okay, so I was reading a report by UNFPA. So it says that heavy fighting is putting tens of thousands of pregnant women in danger. How are the efforts to help pregnant and newborns are going on? Is there aid coming from the United Nations, Red Cross, or other NGOs to save their lives?
I heard that there are a lot of like pregnant women, there are a lot of children that are trapped in the war, and nothing. They don't receive any help for the reasons. The involvement of the international community is very slow. But also, even if even if the international community is willing to help, then the fighting is happening. So the government forces and the militias are not really giving people chance to deliver assistance for those who are in need, because the fighting is happening just around the hospitals, and also the militias are occupying the facilities, the hospitals, the institutions that civilians are hiding. They are all surrounded by the militias and by the government troops. So there's no safe way for the international community to deliver assistance, even if they want to deliver the assistance. So everyone is waiting to see exactly when the gun sounds will stop, so that the people can think of how to help poor people, civilians who are not a part of the conflict.
Okay, so Dr. Alpha, do you foresee upcoming ceasefire or calm? What do you think? Which long-term and diplomatic measures should be taken to alleviate this dangerous situation?
There was, since the fighting broke out, there was initiative from the South Sudanese President Salva Kiir to try to mediate between the two generals to, agree to kind of temporary ceasefire. And from time to time, they agree on 72-hour ceasefire, but then they violate the ceasefire as well, and they keep fighting. I think it happened that 5 times. I think they violated the fifth times of the 72 ceasefire agreement, like where people can, you just like to give chance for the people to go and see if they can try to get out of Khartoum, or if they can take the short people to the hospital, or they can go and buy some food if shops are open. But also the two warring parties, they violate that ceasefire agreement. And but yesterday, I think there was an initiative from the United States of America and from the neighboring Saudi Arabia. I think both Americans and the Saudis, they were able to speak to both sides, both generals, to speak to Hemeti, and as well as speak to Burhan. And they gave initial agreement to extend the ceasefire for another 7 days. That was yesterday. But then again, when I called just a few minutes ago, I called Sudan, and they're telling me that the fighting is still going on. People can still hear the sound of the guns, the heavy artillery airstrikes happening from the government side. So no one is sure if those mediations are working at this stage.
Okay, so since Sudan is, a big exporter of gold and minerals, so like how is Russia playing its role to, mediate between the two generals?
Look, those generals have a history of working together, because Burhan, who is the head of the Transitional Military Council, is the one who actually trained General Hemeti. So Hemeti, so Burhan is kind of his trainee or his teacher. Sorry. And both of them worked together for a long time to commit a lot of crimes in Darfur. So they know each other very well. But when it comes to the resources of Sudan, like diamond or gold, Hemeti, the militia leader, is more in control of the resources that produce the places that produce gold. Militias are more in control, and they directly export to the foreign countries like Emirates or Russia. But I don't know until now to what extent those countries that receive like gold from Sudan through the help of the militias, I don't know to what extent they're trying to help stop the war. Perhaps if Russia or Emirates put more pressure on Hemeti, the General Hemeti, the militia leader, maybe he will listen. but until now we haven't seen like an active involvement from their partners, like from the people that have a long relationship with them.
So it looks like that it's a war of ego and power between the two generals. So what do you think? Again, I will ask you the same question: that which diplomatic and long-term measures should be taken so that the both generals, agree to the terms and conditions?
I think this is a time where international community needs to take serious steps to stop the war in Sudan, because there's a similarity from what's happening between what's happening now in Sudan and what happened in 1994 Rwanda, which led to genocide. When the conflict erupted in Rwanda, then the Americans, the Europeans, they started to evacuate their citizens from that country instead of actually putting pressure on both sides to stop the war. Similar, and that led to the genocide in Rwanda. I think similar thing is happening now in Sudan, where we can see, in front of our TVs, on the media, it's very obvious that killings are taking place, but the international community is not really taking an active action to mediate or to stop. Rather, they are.
What do you think? What do you think? What could be the reason that international community is not playing its proper role? What do you think? What is the reason?
I think the reason. I mean, look, probably the war in Ukraine, the war in other part of the world is over. Is making the powerful countries busy, but also countries are acting based on their interests. I don't know how much interest the Americans have in Sudan, how much interest Russia has in Sudan, how much interest like the other regional players have in Sudan. That is one, and also the other thing is also that the way in which war started in Sudan is very surprising, because it started in Khartoum, and it started in the way that doesn't actually give people a chance to think about like to put in a quick solution for the conflict, because the conflict is more intense that either side is listening to the international community at the moment. It's like, okay, Janjaweed militia will say, okay, I really want to finish the army leader. The army leader is saying, I want to finish the Janjaweed militia. And they're not listening. They're not listening to the international community at this stage. And also countries like South Sudanese and the Ethiopians, the neighboring countries, they were trying to mediate in the early stages of the conflict. But the problem they have also, they're not able to communicate with the leaders of each side, because of the difficulty in communication and because of the intense war as well. But now that it's almost 3 weeks, they a little bit started to listen to the international calls and for the regional calls to extend the ceasefire and return to the table to negotiate their differences more peacefully.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elfa. It was great to have you. We can only hope for the best for Sudan.